This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program today. As mentioned, W.L. Laney is our guest on the program. W.L. is a serial entrepreneur, inventor, author, speaker. He grew up in poverty, turned his life around. He not only built his own business, he has helped people across the country launch their own successful companies. He's the author of the book, A Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. W.L. Laney is our guest. Sir, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Rick. Very happy to be here.
We've got so much to talk about in the program. And when I talk about grew up in poverty, even rags to riches might understate the situation. To understand where you are now and how you're able to help people. And I know it's difficult to go back and tell this story, but I understand in people that you've talked to around the country, they're very appreciative because they can sometimes relate to your circumstances. Let's talk about growing up, because when I say rags to riches, again, that may understate it some. You really had a difficult upbringing.
That's right, Rick. My parents were alcoholics. They were divorced when I was age 3. A couple of years later, my mother married a new alcoholic who was an abusive individual. So I typically went to school black and blue from my heels to the back of my neck. If that had happened in today's society, I certainly would have been taken out of the home. But in those days, everybody minded their own business, and I did the best I could to survive.
And I understand you had about 10 years of this growing up with almost what you described as daily beatings.
Yes. I finally left home. Well, let me digress for a moment. I worked from the time I was 9 to buy all of my own school clothes, any kind of spending money. There just wasn't anything unless I went out and earned it. I recall one time asking my mother, why it was that we didn't have food to eat, we didn't have clothes to wear, but she always had her beer. And she said to me, I have to have some kind of fun. And as I look back about that, what kind of a life must she have felt that she was living to have sacrificed her children in order to have her consumption of alcohol.
And the living conditions were difficult, too. I understand you moved a lot. You basically were in migrant shacks for quite a bit of the time.
Yes, my mother and stepdad were basically fruit tramps. We lived in north central Washington. And so we would start out in Manson, Washington, doing the early work, thinning and things like that. And then we would move to Winthrop, Washington, and work on the cattle ranches during the summertime, back to Manson in the fall to do the apple picking, and then to Chelan, Washington for the cold storage. So I literally had 4 moves, three schools from the time I was in the first grade until I left home at 15.
You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Our guest on the program today is W.L. Laney. His website is WLLaney.com. That's LANEY. Information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You can log on and link on to W.L.'s website. His book is A Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. That's what we're talking about in the program, sort of laying the groundwork, and a couple more questions on your youth, because it's interesting to find out where you came from, how you turned things around. One thing you went through, and I'm not sure the bullying was really that big of a topic back then, but harassed by the students that many people go through and sort of quietly suffer that. How difficult was that to be basically bullied by kids as you were growing up?
I got pretty tough, Rick. I was small for my age, but what I lacked in size, I made up in determination. And yes, bullying was definitely an issue. But it was really not as big of a deal for me as it was getting the beatings at home, because at least at school, the teacher would come around and break it up after a period of time.
So this is where W.L. grew up. He faces a time in his life. You have this, and we're big on talking about attitude, which is the name of the book, A Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. You had this embedded attitude that you've had growing up in the family, leading a nomad's life, that type of thing. How do you go about changing that attitude so suddenly I'm going to take control of my life and not be a victim of my past and a victim of those attitudes?
Well, the first thing that you have to do, Rick, is you have to understand that the subconscious is really what controls our life. And our subconscious is controlled by what it believes. And so all of the things that we are fed, all of the things that we learn when we're growing up, those all become embedded beliefs. And if we're going to make any kind of a change in our life, we have to change those. We talk about an attitude transplant, not an attitude adjustment. For example, if I have fear, so I'm afraid to make my sales call or afraid to go out on a sales call, I don't need to tweak fear. I need to replace fear with self-confidence. And so we have a complete program that we describe to people how to plug in your own IV. It's anytime you go to the hospital for a operation of any kind, the first thing that they do is plug in an IV so that make sure that you get all of the nutrients and vitamin strength that your body needs to withstand the operation that is coming up. So I recommend that you do the same thing for your subconscious, and that is you plug in an IV of positive materials. You read stories about people. As an example, just listening to my story. I did go from rags to riches. I overcame a lot of things, and I did that because of the attitudes that I have. And when you hear what I was able to do, and then you begin to believe, well, he's not that great a guy. I think I can do it as well as he did. And that's really my goal in helping people, is to say, you can overcome. You can be successful. There is hope for you. And if we can build on that hope, so the more I feed my subconscious with the positive input that I give it, success stories and educational materials that's going to improve what I believe. That's the key, is I've got to improve what I believe. And as I begin to believe, then I can take a small action step. That small action step is going to bring about a positive result. That positive result brings about more hope, and we can go on from there.
We're talking with W.L. Laney. WLLaney.com is the website. The book we're talking about is A Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. In the book, you talk about most approaches are driven by willpower, yet your book is different. Explain the motivation behind what you're doing and why it's proven to be successful for you and many, many other people who have followed the plan.
Okay. Willpower is probably the weakest power that we have. Okay, Rick, let me give you an example of what I mean by our belief does and what our subconscious is able to do for us. When I was in the junior high school, the high school band needed an extra person. So they moved me to the high school band. The high school band was raising money for new uniforms by selling what in those days were 50-cent candy bars. And they had a contest for whoever was able to sell the most candy bars. Most of the kids were checking out 3 candy bars, one for mom, one for grandma, and one for Aunt Susie. Well, my home life was so bad, I'd do anything to get out of going home. So I borrowed one of the other kids' bicycles that had a basket on it, and I checked out candy bars by the case. And I sold them door to door. I went up and down the streets of our town selling those candy bars. Well, yes, I won the contest, but the thing that was interesting was I outsold the entire band.
Wow.
That made me think that I was a salesperson. It took me years to find out I really don't have the personality for a salesman. My basic personality is being shy and, let me sit in the back of the room, not the front of the room. But that experience, it did something to my subconscious. My subconscious believed that I was a salesperson. And so I've been very successful in sales as a result of that.
Our guest on This Week in America is W.L. Laney. His website is WLLaney.com. The book we're talking about is A Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. In the book, you talk about most approaches are driven by willpower. Yet in your book, you don't emphasize willpower. And many people have found that to be very successful in following what you're talking about in the book. Explain why you don't rely on willpower as many other programs do, and why your way seems to be so successful.
Well, let me ask you a question. How many people keep their New Year's resolutions past the end of January?
Very, very few.
How many people lose the weight and actually keep the weight off? Those
Very, very few.
people are trying to do based on willpower. Willpower is too weak. We aren't strong enough to hold our goal through willpower. When I talk about an attitude transplant, I'm changing the what I think and what I believe, and changing what I believe in the subconscious then controls my mind, and that's why it's more successful.
The book is called The Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. Also a new book coming out very soon, and we'll keep you updated. We'll have WL back when the book comes out, called The Phoenix Promise. And in that, you talk about, again, going through a very difficult period, sort of feeling sorry for yourself for a while. You have an aha moment, and then it'll be all chronicled in the book, and we'll talk about it. But out of that came this: you turned your life around and you figured, I've got a system now that can work for other people to turn their life around. Let's talk a little bit about the business that you started, not only for yourself, but you're able to set up for other people as well.
Okay, Rick, this is a little difficult because it's easier to talk about rags to riches, and it wasn't my fault that I was born in an alcoholic's home. Okay, later in life, actually about 10 years ago, I had a complete business failure. Everything went up in smoke, which is why we are naming the new book The Phoenix Promise, because you learn how to rise from the ashes like the proverbial phoenix bird. But I was doing very well. My consulting business was doing very well. I was working on a roll up, and then 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden we couldn't get the funding, and the business fell apart. I'm out $500,000. And the problem with a fire is once it starts going, it just consumes everything in its path. So not only did I lose my business, I lost my home, I lost my cars. I'm reduced to, I don't have any way to earn enough money to buy groceries or to pay the utilities on the house that I had built. Was Colleen and I built our dream home. Now that's being foreclosed, and I need money right now. Okay. And so with that as a backdrop, then I reverted back to something that I knew how to do, which was sharpen hairstyling scissors. I'd learned how to do that 45 years ago. And I knew that if I would just buy a scissor sharpener, I could go down the street, call on the hairstylist, and make immediate money. Okay. And one of the things that we tell people is you've got to be willing to do whatever it takes. And a lot of people are not willing to do that because, well, it's just beneath my dignity. Yes, I lost my job, but I'm going to hold on. I'm going to wait for another job that is going to be befitting of my talent and who I am. Well, when you're hungry enough, you don't wait. You do whatever you have to do. In my case, I got a job as Mr. Peanut. Walmart was having a grand opening, and the day labor place where I'd gone to try to find something to do needed a Mr. Peanut. So fortunately, the costume covered my face. So even though my friends who knew me were walking right past me at this grand opening, they didn't know it was me.
Okay? It's an amazing story, and I'm really looking forward to the book coming out. The new one is The Phoenix Promise. The book we're talking about, the main one that's available now at the website, is A Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. Just about a minute or so left in the program. It's gone by way too quickly, and W.L. Laney is our guest. We'll have him back on the program. The business opportunity you put together, refined, and you're saying, besides the satisfaction of coming back again from the problems you went through, being able to help other people going through similar problems, whether it was 9/11 or the crash in 2007, a lot of people are starting over again.
That's right. And what I did, Rick, was I took what I knew and I went to work. I started making money. I took what I knew and I built on that. I improved my service. I invented a sharpening system that was better than anything else out there. And then that proved successful. I put together, I developed a line of high-end scissors. I put together a business model that anybody could follow. I put together the entire package. And now for less than $30,000, I can set people up in business. They can go out and they can earn $80,000 to $120,000 their first year if they're simply willing to get in and do the job that needs to be done.
And this is the system that you used to bounce back again from that situation that happened after 9/11. Our guest on the program is W.L. Laney. Laney is Laney. The website, very simple, WLLaney.com. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on to get information. The book that we're talking about is The Self-Administered Attitude Transplant. The new book coming out very shortly, and we'll keep you posted on that, is The Phoenix Promise. WL, a fascinating story, much more to talk about when you come back to join us in the future. Thank you for sharing your story with us today and offering hope to others.
Thanks, Rick. I was happy to be here.
You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.